Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Live with Littledata. I'm Edward, and I'm joined today by Van from Magnum. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Can't wait for the chat.
Sorry for the slightly weird intro there, actually. I clicked the wrong button. Normally, we have a fairly anodyne one. That was sort of UFO intro. There's nothing weird about you. Um,
Love
so,
that.
yeah, we're going to talk a bit about Klaviyo and GA4 and Attribution today. It's something you know a fair bit about. Perhaps, yeah, we should start with just talking about, kind of what is kind of how does attribution work for email campaigns in Klaviyo, and why would that you want something different from that?
Yeah, it's a very loaded question. I know attribution can be quite a sensitive subject. Let's
Yeah,
get that on the table and straightforward. And it also varies by the complexities of the businesses. So in our business, we get small to medium e-commerce brands. They don't care too much about attribution. They don't question it as often. And that's usually the case when they don't have a big marketing mix or multi-touch channels, playing a part. But of course, the bigger the business and the more they spend within other marketing channels, it becomes a huge topic for us.
yeah,
Now, the topic is usually one of why is data in Klaviyo not matching that of GA4 or Triple Whale or Northbeam or whatever platform.
yeah,
And the reason is simple. It's all about the attribution model, like you say, the way in which these
yeah,
platforms attribute. Now, Klaviyo's attribution, just to summarize it, there's two things essentially that is affected by it. The first configuration is the type of interaction. So by default, it is set to credit an open of an email and also a click. So that combination. So even if someone just opens the email
yeah.
and they, place an order, Klaviyo takes the credit. Is it good? Is it bad? I mean, that's the question, isn't it? Um, it is the same thing that goes with TV advertising or billboards. I
Yeah.
see the billboard and I go buy an ice cream on a hot day. Should that billboard receive the credit?
Yeah.
Most likely, because I've seen the ice cream on a hot day. you know?
But it's a particularly loaded question because in email marketing, like the open rate is not even very accurate anyway. So you might get certain email clients will pre-open emails. So just because that doesn't mean that the actual person saw the email, even if it's marked as
Yep.
open, and vice versa. Some setups block the tracking pixel, so they do read it. They might spend 10 minutes on your email, but it's not tracked as open. So it's a bit of a kind of sensitive
That's the
subject.
thing. And also, if I open an email, but I don't really scroll to anywhere within the
Yeah.
email, that doesn't mean I'm a qualified buyer.
Right.
So that's the one thing. The other one is the window attribution. That's also the one people I see a lot of talk on. I've recently seen a talk about the window duration of the
Yeah.
attribution model. Massive debate. The default one in Klaviyo is a 5-day window.
Yeah.
Now I've seen people reduce it to 1 day just because they feel like someone should convert like within
Mm.
that same period. Some people like it 3 days. I've seen
Mm.
crazy conversations around that, and that's Klaviyo's attribution model is
Mm.
engagement, clicks
Yeah.
opens, and then the attribution window. Yeah.
I mean, in the paid ads world, 5 days is seen as pretty conservative. I mean, often the default will be 30 days. So I don't think that's terrible. But I see your point that most people think of email as a direct response type of medium. So they don't, it's not something you're going to bring you for consideration. You're literally going to click on, yeah, I want that product and buy it. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so you can, but presumably you can change that 5 days to something different if you want to. Yeah.
100%, absolutely, and that's the thing about Klaviyo is, I mean, this is not a Klaviyo conversation necessarily. I mean, any ESP out there should be able to do this. You can change it. They've just set the default to that model. You can change it so it's only click based if you
Yeah.
wanted to. You can set the attribution window to 1 day to 900
Yeah.
days. You can also set the attribution for email touch points, SMS, and push messages or push notifications. So there's a lot of flexibility within it.
Yeah.
And why I think sometimes unfair when people, like Klaviyo is inflating the numbers here. It's like, yeah, but don't be silly. You can go and change it yourself, right? I mean,
Yeah.
only a tool in the system. They're
Yeah.
not the people watching the numbers here.
Yeah, and I guess that'd be the first bit of advice for people who do want, we'll come on to Google Analytics in a moment, but people who want to sort of reduce the differences there is go and set the attribution model on Klaviyo to be the same as Google Analytics, which is basically a 30-day click-through window. So no view-through conversions, just click through. And I think if you if you do that, and actually I actually think the default look back is actually 90 days in Google Analytics, so you probably want to reduce that.
It's for first users is like 90 or something. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So you might want to sort of harmonize those, but kind of go back to the point. So I guess for a lot of marketers, they've got kind of used to that Klaviyo attributed value. They don't really question why they'd want different. What if you go and use a tool like Google Analytics? What are you getting that's different? What's the advantage?
Solid point, or solid question. I think the true difference between them is definitely there's a couple of things really. Firstly, the attribution model is completely different between the two. You've just kind of pointed it out prior to that question. So if you want a more advanced type of attribution model, you refer back to like GA4 or some of the other tools. For example, in Klaviyo, and this is a big problem for bigger teams, more complicated teams, is in Klaviyo, you're very much isolated to other channels. So
yeah,
you almost discredit other touches because email and SMS marketers tend to be so focused on this is my channel, it's my domain. Happy days, off we go. Where in GA4, of course, you can look at a sequence of touch points that led up to a certain conversion.
yeah.
So you just become a much stronger analyst when it comes down to crediting the different touch points. So GA is much better for that. The other thing that
sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to mention, because one of the things that I posted about when we went to the K-London conference with Klaviyo a couple of weeks ago, I know that they want, one of the things on their roadmap is customized attribution models. So I think what they want to do is try and pull in some of the multi-touch attribution stuff that you can do in GA, because I think they're well aware that currently it's a fair complaint that their attribution is very simplistic. I mean, it only considers what the customers do in the email, not any of the other campaigns that bought them there. And while it's not, obviously it won't be as flattering to Klaviyo, I think it will reduce some of the complaints that it's very, very biased towards them. I mean, even although Google owns Google Analytics, it's not like Google campaigns don't rank more highly in Google Analytics than the other campaign. In fact, there's a common misconception that Google
misconception. Yeah,
you can,
that's very true.
Weirdly, that you can choose an attribution in Google Analytics to favor Google campaigns. I'm not quite sure why you do that, but they don't enable it by default.
I'm with you. On the topic of these platforms enabling more advanced different attribution models, I don't think that's a problem. I think the first issue we're sitting with here is the root cause of people don't know what attribution model they should go for.
Yeah.
And the problem is no one has an answer for that.
No.
Because it's a very subjective matter. I recently had, because I've got an upcoming event in June in New York at the Yotpo Roadshow. And I'm going to be speaking on a panel about attribution. So, of course, in my mind, I need to formulate, frameworks here. And I envisioned this how can you make attribution, how can you challenge that setup or the thinking around it? And I had this vision of, take a football team, for instance. Okay, you've got defenders, you've got people attacking, scoring the goals, and so on. Now, each of those players are, let's say, a data source, a marketing channel. So who scored the goal? Was it the guy in front that scored the goal, or was it the guy at the back that started that motion of getting the ball from the defenders to the front?
Well,
so who do you now remove from that?
Yeah, and obviously email is very typically the striker. Like it's the typically the medium that gets the ball in the back of the net. It's not getting, you've got to obviously have some other traffic source to capture the customer's email, basically gets from top of funnel. But obviously by its nature, email SMS is something that's basically getting fed the ball from someone else on the team.
In certain places within the email program, I mean, welcome flow is a good example of where too many people you give email the credit. Your welcome
Yeah,
flow email one converted at 35%. Things are amazing. It's like, no, dude,
yeah,
traffic pushed, paid ads pushed people to the site. They
yeah,
just wanted a discount. Cool.
yeah.
But in certain cases, like retention is like email comes into play when you need to repeat purchase buying, when people don't use paid ads for that. Of course, now email plays a different role. But you are right. Email does fit somewhere in between the striker and the midfield. That's very true. Yep. Just also on your point of GA4, just to quickly wrap that one up. The reason why I always would want to choose GA4 is A/B testing in Klaviyo is very limiting in terms of your success metrics. You can attach it to open rates, click rates, and place order rates. What if you want to attach it to AOV or LTV or maybe bounce rates, for argument's sake? Like people, that go to that landing page, does an email affect the stickiness of if I click on a certain video within an email versus no email, do I stick around for longer? That you can't find in Klaviyo. So GA4 is exceptional for other metrics you want to measure against. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think that's a really good point, that even if Klaviyo does improve the attribution reporting, it's a very long way off being a fully fledged analytics tool. It's obviously all marketing platforms have to do analytics to some extent. I mean, Meta went down this route with Facebook, and at some point they tried to create Facebook analytics, and they realized it was kind of a hiding nowhere, because no one's really going to come in and use Facebook to be the source of truth of the whole business. So they
Exactly.
basically deprecated that, and obviously you can see metrics and graphs and stuff in Facebook ads, but it's only for the purpose of analyzing how the ads are going. And I think similar thing with Klaviyo. No one's going to use Klaviyo though it's a long way off being a true sort of analytics tool. It's just obviously you're going to go in there to measure the campaign performance.
Yeah.
But Google Analytics is much closer to being that sort of that full reporting suite. And I think one of the things that obviously we've seen over the last year is that a lot of brands have got frustrated with the switch to Google Analytics 4. It's definitely a different user interface. I accept it's a harder one to use. And actually, I think you're making a really interesting point before, that it's not actually all about Google Analytics. It's also the fact that there are more data gaps over the years that happen to be perhaps more notable now. Now, some of those data gaps you can fill with Littledata or a similar tool to actually push more accurate touch points and more different events and customer data into there. But some of them, like the lack of SEO keywords and demographics and stuff, are just the nature of the privacy of the modern internet. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of brands, with the switch over last summer, felt frustrated. They've gone to look for different attribution tools. Some of the more popular ones out there, people like Triple Whale, Northbeam, Polar Analytics, and these are all. I mean, they all provide a good, polished experience. The problem, I think, is that deep down they're not actually doing anything different to Google Analytics doing. It just looks more polished. It feels more. It feels more presented. In some case, it feels more coherent. Like you're getting this one view of the business, but actually underneath the way they're actually tracking the data is not very different. It's just basic client side tracking, and so you're definitely solving. I mean, you're solving one of the problems, the one that we've highlighted with Klaviyo, which is that at least you're going to get an idea of which campaigns are your kind of your first touch versus your midfielder versus your strikers, but what you're not doing is actually giving yourselves that sort of true sort of flexible analytics tool that you can go and build. Hey, I want to understand people who shop in California after midnight. How do they convert? They sort of you can't do those sort of segments.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is that I think the problem I have with, again, sorry to all the client partners out there, the partners of Magnet Monster, sorry to all future clients for saying this, but I think the biggest issue here is that we're trying to fit what is that square peg into a round hole here. We all know customer journeys, it is immensely complicated, especially nowadays. Jumping from TikTok to Facebook to this to that to email to billboards to TV to whatever else. We're still treating attribution measurement as how well did this campaign do? Ooh, how well is this email doing? Whereby we should be measuring, like people. Like I've got 500 people in a database. I want to convert. I want to get 500 people. I want to get as many as I can to buy ice cream.
Yeah.
That is almost a better measurement because you can't really measure. We've seen cases in Klaviyo. Someone would sign up to the newsletter. They would only purchase in 6 months' time, which is okay because it's a high ticket item, and they've received probably 30 emails and probably 20 SMS messages. Now, was all of them necessary to get that person over the line?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Was it only a particular one that got them converted? Maybe not. At the end of the day, that person converted. So we are trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, unfortunately. But people don't want to hear that out there because they see sweet, like people want to know how should we spend budget and stuff. So I get it.
Yeah. I think that is one of the things I think is changing with Google Analytics is that there was a big shift with GA4 to move to more of a user centric model rather than starting to talk about sessions and visits, which are basically effectively email clicks and the same measurement. Let's actually start talking about users. The challenge, and I guess that this leads into what Littledata is doing as a technology, is that if you can't, a user in Google Analytics, it's not really the same thing as a person. It's basically you can think of it as the cookie lifespan, basically the extent to which you can track. It's the same anonymous person you visited the day before, maybe on a different device and so on. And that's the modern challenge, is that user journey is very fragmented, which means that first of all, you can't track all the customer touch points. That means you can't do the attribution well back to it works fine again for last click mediums like email that typically are going to be well represented, but it's really hard to track. If you have a long consideration journey, stuff like paid ads or influencers or content which got the customer in the top of the funnel.
Data stitching, and if someone is using an app, you can make a purchase via an app. If you don't use a server-side tracking tool like Littledata, you lose people on app behaviors versus website behaviors versus mobile behaviors. So data stitching, you're right, it becomes fragmented and scattered.
That's the other challenge, is the cross-device thing. So obviously, a lot of modern, certainly in the Western world, a lot of mobile users have, a lot of e-commerce buyers have multiple devices that they're browsing and store from. And one of the things I'm excited about personally the last couple of months is that Google started allowing you to basically share first-party data in a encrypted, hashed way, so that it's privacy, it's compliant, but basically enabling you to track users based on their Google profile, not just their cookie. And this is a technology that really Klaviyo doesn't have the power to do, because then people are not logging into Klaviyo. The end users not logging into Klaviyo, they don't have accounts. It's really only Meta and Google that have the global reach to be able to do this. But I think basically leveraging that device graph, as they call it, they kind of user graph, that sort of huge database they have of all these different people on different devices, and who the fact that they're linked together. I think that is really interesting. Now, it's too early to tell. It's only a beta program at the moment. It's too early to tell whether it has a big difference on the attribution modeling, but I think it should. I'm excited that's the direction of travel. There's a lot of people talking about the cookie apocalypse, as if there's going to be this sudden drop off it, and it's not going to suddenly just disappear. But there has been and continues to be an erosion in the ability to track customers, particularly over many sessions and many devices. And I think this is the only solution I know of that's really robust, is let's actually Littledata can go as far as we can go to try and what I would call persist the cookies, or kind of extend the lifetime, the window of look back at that customer journey. But the true long-term solution is to actually track that person using personal data. Now, Klaviyo is doing that. I mean, that's, as you were saying, that the whole way they can do view through attribution, for example, is based on that customer profile tracking. Like they don't, if there's no click, there's no UTM parameters or something. So they're doing it based on the fact that you will meet Edward has seen the email, and then they also see me Edward come in the same email profile and come and purchase, and they put the two together.
Exactly. Yeah, because they also have their own tracking pixels. They append to email code. So they do have some measurement in place to allow that for sure.
But there's a challenge on the horizon for that, which is that the latest version of iOS that rolled out in February this year, I think it was, basically started to limit those user identifiers. So in the Klaviyo world, it's the _KX parameter. It's a little code that you'll see in the email link.
Yeah.
And what that does is enable the Klaviyo to say, look, this email this click basically came from this flow or this campaign. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's only a matter of time before Klaviyo gets recognized by Apple as one of the tracking technologies out there. At the moment, they're not on it. It's a fairly short list, I think, of 5 or 6, like Microsoft, Google, etc. But I would see Klaviyo in their position in the market as being that second tier. Like sometime over the next year, I'll predict they'll start being blocked. And that'll be classic Apple faction. That'll be unannounced or just be some minor update. I'm sure Klaviyo is aware this coming down the tracks, but I think what it means is that at that point the attribution Klaviyo might start getting worse. But the attribution modeling in Google will be unaffected as long as you're using UTM parameters, because there's no current guidance that UTM parameters are being restricted anyway. There's nothing that's happening there.
Super agreed. The thing is also, I think that's also why a lot of these people are trying to implement CDPs, customer data platforms, to try and own more of this data, so they can stitch it together, very much like a CRM. But yeah, it is going to be an interesting time for all of us, and I think we're all in the same boat there. No one's going to be excluded from it. It's going to be a struggle all around.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think we covered a lot there, so we'll probably wrap up there. But thank you very much for sharing your views. We're always into. I mean, we have a foot in both camps, because Littledata is both providing data to Google Analytics and to Klaviyo for different purposes. But I think my personal view is that marketers should use both, but they definitely are doing themselves disfavor if they're not setting up Google Analytics properly and having that as a sort of at least a backup way of checking what's going on.
Agreed. The one thing that I can tell people, and this is just to kind of also wrap up from my end, is if you do decide to change your attribution windows and your models, do know that your before-after comparison is going to be muddied and broken. We've had an interesting case where, so we signed the client and we thought, hey, listen, 5-day attribution window is far too wide for your business. We're going to make it 3. And that instantly brought down the revenue attributed to emails, SMS. Now, is it a more closer reflection? Maybe not, but you do screw up your before-after comparison. So be very meticulous and strategic when you do make some of these big changes. But yeah, appreciate the chat, and it's always good to share some of these knowledge bombs.
Thanks for those words of advice. See you again soon.